You wouldn't believe what happened with the $120 million masterpiece of Guillermo del Toro after waiting 30 years to create the perfect version of Frankenstein. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to our channel for the latest Hollywood drama updates. We have seen many Frankenstein movies in the past, and Guillermo del Toro, being the Mexican filmmaker and author, wanted absolute perfection. He had this project in mind for decades and had plans about turning it into a reality. The idea shaped his imagination while simultaneously haunting him creatively. The idea about making the perfect Frankenstein came to him in the mid-2000s. By 2007, del Toro was openly chasing studios, trying his best to convince someone or anyone to give him a chance. He believed Frankenstein's legacy wasn't death. Rather, it needed a full revival, and this could be the definitive interpretation of Mary Shelley's classic story that would take over the world. And if there's one thing we learn from the filmmaker, it's that he would never give up, and still, he kept chasing the dream. He even said that he always dreamed about creating this masterpiece, but if he had already made the movie, he wouldn't be able to dream anymore. So, even in this pain, he had plans, and even in this pain, the pursuit of greatness made it a bit bearable. The project went from studio to studio, and surprisingly, one of the studios liked the concept but hesitated because it was too big a risk for them to pour hundreds of millions of dollars. Most people at that time wanted a safe script they could count on and invest in, so it would deliver the best return on investment. It kept slipping away, even if del Toro became one of the most respected directors alive. He won many awards for his directed movies, but the real breakthrough came after his Pinocchio movie hit the mark and won an Oscar for Best Animated Feature Film. Suddenly, Netflix came to him, and they didn't just say yes to his offer or put too many conditions. Rather, they were looking to make the full version with no limits.
Big thanks to Netflix and Ted Sarandos, who asked me, give me your bucket list. I said, Pinocchio, Frankenstein, urgent.
Urgent.
This wasn't a small horror film, but a $120 million Gothic epic masterpiece, or the second most expensive movie of his entire career. Netflix gave him something that most studios weren't able to, and it was total creative freedom. He wouldn't be interfered with mid-shoot, there would not be any rewrites until he wanted, and not be studio notes that usually end up turning filmmakers off. However, Netflix had one big condition. Even after dismissing all the small conditions, it was that they would have absolute control over the distribution. Del Toro thought that it wasn't a big thing, but that it would eventually destroy everything that he had created. The struggles. Just when his dream was coming true, a huge disaster hit in January 2024. Lead actor Andrew Garfield had to leave the film. It wasn't because he wanted to, but because the SAG-AFTRA strikes pushed his schedule so much that he wouldn't even make it into his new filming dates. This was where the whole filmmaking industry suffered, and del Toro suffered the most.
I was just with Jacob Elordi in Marrakesh, who ended up playing the character of the creature, so I was hearing about how amazing and how satisfying that was for him. So I'm very, very glad that it was him doing it. And I'm, of course, disappointed that I didn't get to do it, but because I love Guillermo and I love Oscar.
At this point, the director had already spent 9 months building the creature design around Andrew Garfield's body and face. The makeup, the silhouette, and every little detail were according to the lead actor. But at this point, all that effort was gone. Moreover, del Toro then spent 9 difficult weeks rebuilding the entire thing. The 9 months of work were replaced by 2 months of panic, and we already know that the new Frankenstein design wasn't even comparable to the 9 months that he spent before on Andrew Garfield's design. Now he needed a new role for the movie. After lots of consideration, Jacob Elordi became del Toro's favorite due to his taller frame, his overall vibe, and the demeanor he had after going through the Euphoria movie role. But due to the change in actors, nothing from the original design could carry over. The team had to start from zero. But that's where something amazing happened. Even the famous Mike Hills had to say that Elordi resembled Boris Karloff, who was considered the best portrayal of Frankenstein. Working day and night for just 9 weeks, the team created one of the most complex creatures ever created for film. No CGI was used in Frankenstein's design. With more than 46 artificially made pieces, the job for the actor wasn't easy.
And every time he had an emotional scene, we would be on this eye. And every time he would be angry, we would be on the angry animal eye.
Even though a crisis occurred, Del Toro thought that it was for the best. That's because what emerged was extraordinary and something that they didn't even expect. So when the film premiered at Venice, the audience stood and clapped for 15 minutes straight. This was the longest applause of the entire festival that had ever happened before. According to critics, this was a masterpiece, a work of pure artistry, and some even call it the best monster movie ever made in the decade. However, when Netflix released it in the United States, everything started collapsing, and this was something Del Toro never expected would happen. Netflix announced the theatrical release on October 7. The movie would be launched in Los Angeles and New York only. Then, by October 24, they expanded it to 382 theaters. By November 7, the streaming release would be done. That was 3 weeks, and that is also the minimum Oscar qualification window. It wasn't a release strategy, and it wasn't any attempt to succeed. It was just a technical requirement that needed a way. But disaster struck. Before we talk about this disaster, please subscribe to the channel if you want to know the ins and outs of the movie industry like never before. The disaster was that there was no AMC, no Regal, no major chains, and almost zero multiplexes. Only 382 screens played the film nationwide. To understand how small that is, a mid-budget horror film would open up to 2,000 to 3,000 screens after its release. The crazy part is that even IMAX only gave Frankenstein 10 total screens. Netflix didn't promote it, there was no marketing push, there were no national TV spots, the billboards didn't even wave anywhere, and no one even knew that the movie was running in theaters. But how bad could the effects really be? If Del Toro were such a good filmmaker, wouldn't his Frankenstein make it regardless? Well, not really. Opening weekend numbers were brutal, only $345,000. This is just $900 per theater. Here it is written in words, not $900,000. And by the end of its limited run, the total domestic box office was just $129,000 for a film that had around a $120 million budget. This number is so small that it wouldn't even cover the expenses of one set. But here is the twist. Netflix didn't really consider this a failure. Del Toro even tweeted that Netflix planned to expand the film to around 1,500 to 2,000 screens, but that never happened. They said nothing, there were no explanations, and Netflix didn't even adjust the strategy. But here's the crazy secret. Netflix doesn't really use theoretical success as its metric, like most filmmakers do. They don't care about the box office. The real goal was something entirely different. Netflix wanted subscriber retention and streaming hours. Their mission wasn't just to help Frankenstein reach theaters. It was to build the hype, the buzz, and to funnel everyone to their platform. Just think of it like this. A small, theoretical release and a massive critical praise would give birth to scarcity, mystique, and curiosity. When people hear that there is a Frankenstein movie around, but they cannot watch it anywhere, something inside them awakens. This way, the film becomes one content tile among thousands, and Netflix measures its success using its private algorithmic data. This is the engagement within the first 15 seconds, completion rates, and whether subscribers stay on their platform after watching the movie. And by that very metric, Frankenstein was a big win. However, the win came at a huge cost. The movie never reached its real audience, or something that would say its real potential. It wasn't because it was bad or directed badly, but it was because it was never given a chance. Going back in time, everyone who saw the movie in Venice believed that it had huge Oscar potential. Was it the best picture possible? And did the actor do a great job? Of course. And did the movie have one of the best directors to ever grace the planet? Of course. After watching the movie personally, it had amazing emotional depth, technical brilliance, and a vibe that screamed the original Frankenstein. However, the minute Netflix released the release plan, Academy voters got the message that Oscar is not our priority. And let's be real, without a theatrical push, the Academy saw this film as less serious, like they didn't want the Oscar. And Netflix already knows this. They've been through this before. and they've made many big movies fall. Why it failed. So, how does a potential Best Picture contender lose its team this fast? It is simple. The studio didn't fight for it. They didn't believe the traditional rollout would work, and they didn't even want to compete for the Oscar campaign. Netflix did not believe the film should be seen in theaters. And after 30 years of nothing but dreaming, Del Toro's greatest passion project couldn't live up to its hype. He was stuck in a corporate strategy that he never expected. And Netflix took full advantage here. This is the real failure we are talking about. It's not that the movie failed. It's not that critics hate it. And it's definitely not that the audience found it boring. No, the strategy is that almost no one saw it the way the director intended it to be. The movie wasn't in cinemas as it should have been. Netflix controlled the budget, the production, the distribution, and everything was strapped around it. Even if at first it felt like they weren't that involved. Yet. However, one thing is for sure. They gave Del Toro everything that he needed to create his freedom, except for that one thing that filmmakers need the most, a real audience. And when Del Toro got what he wanted, which was a prestige title, award buzz, and engagement, Netflix moved on. The film was swallowed by fodder, and now many other movies are dominating the front page. The saddest thing about this whole story is not that the movie is not on the box office radar, but it's that Netflix never apologized. They never wanted to fix it, and they acted like nothing went wrong. Because, according to them, nothing really did happen. This was their plan. Del Toro dreamed the story for 3 decades. He fought studios, survived, and worked on other projects so he could be noticed by big studios. It all came down to having his dream ultimately fail. But now, a question arises. When a studio finds a masterpiece but then hides it from the world, who was the movie really for? It wasn't for the director because he wanted big numbers. It wasn't for the people because they wanted to see it, but it was for Netflix. The hidden villain was stopping the movie from reaching its original potential. Now, we'd love to know your opinions on this issue. Do you think Netflix did Del Toro bad? Let us know in the comments below, and subscribe to our channel if you want more movie industry buzz like this.